In 1968, NASA's Apollo lunar mission faced a critical problem. How do you keep water pure in space? Astronauts needed drinking water for missions lasting days. There were no filters to replace, no chemicals to add, and no one to monitor the system. One contamination event could kill the entire crew. NASA needed something that had never existed before. Their solution was shocking in its simplicity. A device the size of a cigarette pack, just 9 ounces, was installed aboard the Apollo spacecraft. No moving parts, no filter cartridges, no maintenance required. Engineers called it elegant, critics called it impossible. The results were extraordinary. This tiny device eliminated 100% of bacteria from the water supply, automatically, continuously, without a single person monitoring it. For the entire duration of the mission, the water remained perfectly pure. It worked flawlessly in zero gravity, in extreme temperatures, in the harshest environment humans had ever operated in. NASA declared it a complete success. Here's where the story gets dark. If this technology worked perfectly in space, why didn't it come home? Millions of people on Earth were, and still are, dying from contaminated water every year. This device could have changed that. Yet it never reached the public at scale. Did corporate greed bury it? Did billion-dollar water treatment industries feel threatened? Or was there something else? A quiet decision made in boardrooms that kept a space-age miracle locked away for decades. That answer lies in what happened after the mission landed. Long before laboratories, long before microscopes, long before the word bacteria even existed, the Egyptians already had the answer. The Nile River was life itself for Egyptian civilization. But it was also a source of disease, dysentery, and death. Egyptian healers observed something that modern science would take thousands of years to explain. Water stored in copper vessels stayed clean. Water stored in clay or wood did not. They didn't know why. They didn't need to. They documented it, practiced it, and passed it down for generations. A solution hiding in plain sight for over 4 millennia. The evidence isn't legend. It's written record. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical documents in human history, contains explicit references to copper being used for sterilization and wound treatment. Written around 2400 BC, it describes copper not as a metal, but as a healing material. This wasn't folklore. This was ancient medical science, recorded, systematic, and deliberate. The Egyptians weren't guessing. They were prescribing. Here's what makes this story genuinely remarkable. Across the ancient world in civilizations that had zero contact with each other, the same discovery was being made independently. Greek sailors navigating the Mediterranean and beyond carried copper pipes aboard their vessels. They had learned, through hard experience, the water stored or passed through copper remained drinkable on long voyages. Copper wasn't just metal to them, it was survival equipment. The Romans, the greatest engineers of the ancient world, integrated copper piping directly into their famous aqueduct systems. As water traveled miles through copper channels into cities like Rome, it was being naturally purified along the way. A public health system built on a principle its architects didn't fully understand, but completely trusted. Copper wasn't a choice. Across the ancient world, it was the standard. Thousands of miles apart, with no shared language, no trade routes, no communication whatsoever, 2 more civilizations arrived at the exact same conclusion. The Aztecs of Mesoamerica used copper vessels for storing and purifying water and treated wounds with copper-based compounds. Their healers recognized its protective properties and built it into their medical practices long before European contact. Hindu tradition in ancient India prescribed storing water in copper vessels, a practice called tamra jal, as both a health practice and a spiritual ritual. Ancient Ayurvedic texts, some dating back over 3,000 years, specifically recommend drinking water that has sat in copper overnight for its purifying and healing properties. This practice is still followed by millions of Indians today. Stop and consider what we are really looking at here. Egypt, Greece, Rome, the Aztec Empire, ancient India, 5 civilizations, 5 continents, thousands of years, 0 communication between them, and every single one independently discovered the same truth about copper. In science, when separate researchers arrive at the same conclusion through different paths, we call it convergent evidence, and we treat it as proof. The ancient world ran this experiment across 4,400 years, and across the entire globe. They all got the same result. Great discoveries are rarely planned. In 1984, a man named Don Heskett was conducting routine water testing in his laboratory. Almost by accident, he dropped a brass pen into a container of chlorinated water. What happened next stopped him cold. He watched, in real time, as the chlorine in the water simply disappeared, not reduced, not diminished, gone. The brass pen had done in minutes what expensive filtration systems struggled to do at all. Heskett wasn't looking for a discovery, but he had just stumbled onto one of the most important moments in water purification history. He spent the next several years figuring out exactly why it happened. The answer lay in basic electrochemistry, a principle that had been sitting in physics textbooks for over a century, but had never been applied to water filtration in this way. Brass is an alloy made of two metals, copper and zinc. When these two metals are combined and submerged in water, something extraordinary happens at the molecular level. Zinc acts as the anode. It gives up electrons. Copper acts as the cathode. It receives those electrons. The water between them completes the circuit. The result? A spontaneous, continuous, self-powered microbattery, generating an electrical charge with no external power source, no batteries, no maintenance, just two metals and water. This galvanic reaction doesn't just create electricity, it creates something far more powerful for water purification. It generates copper and zinc ions that are released continuously into the water passing through. And those ions are lethal to everything you don't want in your water. This is where the science becomes almost cinematic. When copper ions are released into water, they become precision weapons at the cellular level. Here's exactly what happens when a copper ion encounters a bacterium. Step 1. Membrane destruction. The copper ion carries a positive electrical charge. Bacterial cell membranes carry a negative charge. The ion is magnetically drawn to the membrane and punctures it, like a needle through a balloon. The cell wall ruptures. The bacterium begins to die instantly. Step 2. Internal shutdown. Copper ions that penetrate the membrane attack the bacteria's internal systems, disrupting enzyme function, interfering with DNA replication, and shutting down the cellular machinery the organism needs to survive and reproduce. Step 3. No resistance. Possible. Here is what makes this different from antibiotics. Bacteria can evolve resistance to chemical attacks. They cannot evolve resistance to physics. The electrochemical charge that destroys their membrane is a physical force, and you cannot genetically mutate your way out of physics. Step 4. Heavy metal. Extraction. The microbattery doesn't just kill biology, it also acts as a molecular magnet for heavy metals like lead, mercury, and arsenic dissolved in the water. Through a process called electrochemical reduction, these toxic metals are pulled out of the water and bonded to the filter medium. Permanently removed, not just relocated. The water coming out the other side isn't just disinfected, it is chemically cleaner than what went in. Don Heskett didn't just observe the accident, he engineered it into a product. He spent years refining the copper-zinc alloy ratio, optimizing the granule size, and testing the results. What emerged from his laboratory was a filtration medium he called KDF, kinetic degradation fluxion. The results of independent laboratory testing were staggering. 99.9% of chlorine removed from municipal water, lead reduced to below detectable limits. Mercury, arsenic, and iron significantly reduced bacteria and algae growth completely inhibited. No electricity required, no replacement chemicals needed. Filter medium lasts for years, not weeks. The EPA recognized it. NSF International certified it. Water treatment professionals began calling it one of the most significant advances in point-of-use filtration in decades. KDF technology has been certified, tested, published, and proven for over 3 decades. It requires no power. It produces no waste. It needs no monitoring. It is cheap to manufacture. It works in both modern cities and remote villages with equal effectiveness. And yet, walk into any supermarket today. Look at the water filter aisle. You will find pitcher filters with activated carbon that need replacing every 30 days. You will find reverse osmosis systems costing thousands of dollars. You will find chemical tablets and UV purifiers. You will not easily find KDF prominently marketed to ordinary consumers. A technology that eliminates 99.9% of chlorine, removes lead, and inhibits bacterial growth, certified by the EPA, validated by independent labs, backed by 40 years of real-world use, remains largely unknown to the people who need it most. The ancient Egyptians figured out copper's power in 2400 BC. Modern science confirmed and perfected it in 1984. The question is not whether it works. The question is, why don't you already know about it? Let's talk about money. Because this story, like most stories of suppressed innovation, ultimately comes down to money. The global water filtration industry generates $35 billion every single year. That number is not an accident. It is not simply the natural result of people wanting clean water. It is the carefully engineered outcome of a business model specifically designed to make sure you never stop paying. To understand why a proven, ancient, NASA-validated, EPA-certified technology remains unknown to most consumers, you first need to understand how the water filter industry actually makes its money. Walk into any major retailer. Pick up the most popular water filter pitcher on the shelf. Turn the box around and read the fine print. Replace filter cartridge every 30 to 60 days. Now do the math. Cost breakdown amount. Filter pitcher, one time, $35, $50 replacement cartridge, $15 and $25 replacements per year, 6 to 12. Annual recurring cost, $90, $300, 10-year total. Cost $900, $3,000 plus. You didn't buy a water filter, you signed up for a subscription. The pitcher sitting on your counter is not the product. The pitcher is the hook. The product, the thing the company actually profits from year after year, decade after decade, is that small plastic cartridge you throw in the garbage every 2 months. This is the razor and blades model, perfected and applied to something you cannot live without, clean drinking water. And it works extraordinarily well for the company selling it. For the consumer, you are paying hundreds of dollars annually for a product that, in many cases, stops working effectively long before you replace it, while a superior alternative exists that costs a fraction of the price and lasts years, not weeks. Now ask the critical question, why doesn't every filter use KDF copper zinc technology? The answer is not technical. KDF works better than activated carbon by almost every measure. The answer is not regulatory. The EPA has certified it. The answer is not scientific. 40 years of peer-reviewed research confirms it. The answer is a single word, patent. Activated carbon, patented formulations, proprietary manufacturing processes, licensing fees, replacement cartridges with embedded chips that prevent third-party refills. Every 60 days, the patent continues to generate revenue. Copper and zinc, elements on the periodic table. You cannot patent copper, you cannot patent zinc, you cannot patent the galvanic reaction between them. It is a law of physics that has existed since the universe began. Any manufacturer, anywhere in the world, could produce a KDF-based filter tomorrow without paying a single cent in licensing fees. And here is the economic death blow for the subscription model. A KDF filter lasts up to 6 years, not 60 days, not 6 months, 6 years. One filter purchase, 6 years of clean water, no recurring revenue, no replacement cartridges, no subscription, no profit stream. For a $35 billion industry built entirely on the guaranteed recurring purchase of replacement cartridges, a filter that works for 6 years and cannot be patented is not just an inconvenient competitor. It is an existential threat. In 2008, something remarkable happened quietly, with almost no media coverage. The United States Environmental Protection Agency officially registered copper as an antimicrobial material, the first solid material in history to receive this designation. This was not a minor bureaucratic update. This was the world's most powerful environmental regulatory body, formally confirming, in writing, on the official record, that copper surfaces kill bacteria, viruses, and fungi, including dangerous pathogens like E. coli, MRSA, and influenza A. The science was unambiguous. The registration was official. The implications were enormous. Hospitals began quietly installing copper surfaces on door handles, bed rails, and IV stands. Studies showed 40% reductions in hospital-acquired infections in copper-equipped rooms. The medical community took notice. And then, nothing happened in the consumer water filter market. Think about what that means. The EPA officially confirmed in 2008 that copper kills 99.9% of bacteria. This confirmation built on KDF technology that had been certified for water filtration since the late 1980s. The ancient world had been using this knowledge since 2400 BC. Yet today, in 2024, walk into any Walmart, Target, or home goods store. Go to the water filter section, count the products using copper zinc KDF technology as their primary filtration method. You will count very few. Instead, you will find shelf after shelf of activated carbon cartridges, products requiring replacement every 30, 60 days, generating billions in annual recurring revenue, sold by companies that have every financial incentive to make sure you never learn that a better, cheaper, longer-lasting alternative exists. This is not a conspiracy requiring secret meetings in dark rooms. It does not need to be. It simply requires that marketing budgets flow toward profitable products and away from ones that aren't. It requires that retail shelf space, bought and paid for through co-marketing agreements, goes to brands with recurring revenue models. IT requires that the companies with $35 billion in annual sales have vastly more money to spend on advertising, influencer partnerships, and consumer education than the smaller manufacturers, selling KDF-based filters with no recurring cartridge revenue to fund a marketing machine. The technology isn't hidden. The research is publicly available. The EPA registration is on record. But information that isn't marketed doesn't spread, and technology that threatens a $35 billion subscription model doesn't get marketed. You don't suppress the truth by hiding it. You suppress it by simply never paying to amplify it. Every time you replace a water filter cartridge, a small portion of your money funds the lobbying, the marketing, and the retail agreements that ensure the alternative remains obscure. The industry isn't selling you clean water. It is selling you the recurring feeling of doing something about your water, while making sure the solution that would end your need to keep buying never reaches mainstream awareness. The Egyptians used copper for free. NASA used it to keep astronauts alive. The EPA certified it as genuinely antimicrobial. And the water filter industry spent $35 billion making sure you never put those three facts together. Everything we have covered across 4 parts leads to this moment. You now know what NASA knew in 1968. You now know what the Egyptians knew in 2400 BC. You now know what a $35 billion industry has spent decades making sure you never figure out. Now let's talk about what you can actually do with that knowledge, starting today, for less than the cost of a fast food meal. What you need, item, where to get it. Approximate. Cost, 14-gauge copper wire. Any hardware store, $3, $5 zinc strip or zinc mesh. Hardware, plumbing store, $2, $4 glass or ceramic vessel. Already in your kitchen, $0. Activated charcoal coal, pet store or pharmacy. $5 $8 clean cloth or muslin. Any fabric store, $1, $2, $11, $19. This is not a compromise solution. This is not a poor man's alternative. This is the same fundamental science that went into Apollo spacecraft water systems, assembled from materials available at any hardware store on Earth. Step 1. Prepare the copper. Take your 14-gauge copper wire and coil it loosely, like a spring, so water can flow around and through it easily. Do not compress it into a tight ball. Surface area contact is everything. The more water touches copper, the more ions are released, the more purification occurs. Step 2. Prepare the zinc. Cut your zinc strip into small pieces or roll the zinc mesh into a loose cylinder. Place it in direct contact with the copper coil. This physical contact between copper and zinc is what creates the galvanic microbattery. Without contact, you have 2 separate metals. With contact, you have an electrochemical engine. Step 3. Layer your system. In your glass or ceramic vessel, layer the materials from bottom to top. Cloth layer at the very bottom prevents particles passing through. Activated charcoal layer, 2 to 3 inches deep. Another thin cloth layer, copper zinc assembly on top. Step 4. Pour and wait. Pour your water through the top. Let it filter down through the layers naturally. Gravity does the work. Now comes the most important part. This is where most DIY water purification attempts fail, not because the science is wrong, but because people are impatient. Copper purification is not instant. It is thorough. For maximum effectiveness, water that is passed through your copper zinc system should rest in contact with the copper for a minimum of 8 hours. For complete bacterial elimination, the 100% result NASA achieved, the gold standard is 16 hours of contact time. This is not a flaw. This is the mechanism. During those 16 hours, copper ions are continuously releasing into the water. They are seeking out bacterial cell membranes. They are disrupting and destroying microbial life at the molecular level. They are bonding with heavy metal particles and pulling them out of suspension. The water that emerges after 16 hours is not the same water that went in. It has been fundamentally transformed at the chemical and biological level. Practical implementation: fill your system every evening before bed. By morning, 8 hours later, water is significantly purified. For complete purification, fill in the morning and drink in the evening. Maintain 2 vessels in rotation so you always have purified water ready. This is exactly how ancient civilizations used copper vessels. They filled them, they waited, they drank. They stayed healthier than their neighbors who didn't. 4,000 years of human field testing validated this waiting period before a single laboratory existed to explain why. If you want to go beyond basic DIY and build something that genuinely rivals, and in some ways surpasses, commercial filtration systems costing $400 to $600, add a deliberate 2-stage process. Stage 1, the KDF layer, copper zinc galvanic action. Primary targets, chlorine, chloramines, bacteria, algae, heavy metals, lead, mercury, arsenic. Mechanism, electrochemical ion exchange and galvanic reaction. Result, water is disinfected and stripped of inorganic contaminants. Stage 2, the activated charcoal layer. Primary targets, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, pesticides, herbicides, pharmaceutical residues, taste and odor compounds. Mechanism, adsorption, contaminants. Bond to the massive porous surface area of activated carbon result. Water is chemically cleaned of organic contaminants that copper zinc does not target. Why this combination is powerful? Copper zinc and activated charcoal do not compete. They are complementary, each targeting a completely different category of contamination. Contaminant type copper zinc. Activated charcoal chlorine eliminated, adsorbed bacteria killed. Not primary target, lead and heavy metals. Remove partial pesticides and VOCs, not primary target. Adsorbed pharmaceutical residues, limited. Adsorbed taste and odor, improved, significantly improved. Together, these 2 stages cover virtually the entire spectrum of common water contaminants: biological, inorganic, and organic. A commercial reverse osmosis system at $600 removes more categories of contaminants, but it also wastes 3 to 4 gallons of water for every gallon purified, requires professional installation, needs annual membrane replacement, and strips beneficial minerals alongside harmful ones. Your 2-stage copper zinc charcoal system wastes nothing, costs under $20, requires no installation, and lasts for years. The $600 filter is not 600 times better. It is marketed 600 times more aggressively. A system this simple requires almost no maintenance, but what little it does require matters. Copper wire. Rinse monthly. If you see green oxidation, copper patina, scrub gently with a lemon and salt mixture, rinse thoroughly and return to use. The patina is not harmful, but clean copper releases ions more effectively. Zinc. Check every 3 to 6 months. Zinc is the sacrificial anode in this system. It gives up electrons so the galvanic reaction can occur. Over time, zinc will slowly diminish. Replace when significantly reduced, typically every 1 to 2 years. Activated charcoal. Replace every 3 to 6 months, or regenerate by boiling in clean water for 15 minutes and sun-drying completely before reuse. The vessel. Clean monthly with a dilute vinegar solution. Rinse thoroughly before refilling. Total annual maintenance cost, approximately $5 to $10. Compare that to $9,300 in annual replacement cartridges for a standard commercial filter. We began this series in 1968 aboard an Apollo spacecraft hurtling toward the moon. We traveled back to 2400 BC and the banks of the Nile, where Egyptian healers had already solved the same problem NASA was facing, without computers, without laboratories, without billion-dollar budgets. We watched Don Heskett accidentally rediscover that truth in 1984 with a brass pen in a container of water. We saw the EPA officially confirm in 2008 what the ancient world had known for 4 millennia. And we watched a $35 billion industry quietly ensure that none of this knowledge ever became household conversation. Because household conversation doesn't generate recurring cartridge revenue. Here is what I want you to understand. This knowledge does not belong to NASA. It does not belong to the EPA. It does not belong to water filter corporations or chemical engineers or ancient Egyptian priests. It belongs to you. It always has. It was being practiced by ordinary people. Sailors, farmers, mothers storing water for their children, thousands of years before any corporation existed to monetize it. The only reason you didn't already know this is because knowing it costs someone else money. This week, visit a hardware store, spend $15, build your first copper zinc water system. Let it run for 16 hours. Taste the difference. This month, add the activated charcoal stage. Run both together. You now have a 2-stage filtration system that outperforms products costing 30 times more. Today, right now, share this information. Send it to someone who pays $20 a month for replacement filter cartridges. Share it with someone in a country where clean water is not guaranteed. Share it with someone who simply deserves to know that the solution to one of humanity's oldest problems costs less than a movie ticket and has been quietly available for 4,400 years. Corporate systems survive on your ignorance, not because they are evil, but because ignorance is simply more profitable than knowledge. Every industry that sells you a subscription to something you could own outright depends on you never asking why. Water filtration is one example, but the pattern repeats itself across pharmaceuticals, food systems, energy, and agriculture. The template is always the same. Suppress the simple solution, market the complex, expensive one, and ensure the replacement cycle never ends. Breaking that cycle starts with a single piece of information shared between two people. You now have that information. The Egyptians used copper vessels. NASA used it in space. The EPA certified it. And now you know it too. The $35 billion industry was counting on you not to. Prove them wrong.